Alright, I am back with another build, and today we've got a build that I had planned since before patch 8 even released. Once we started getting a look at the pre-release content, I had some ideas for builds that I knew I wanted to do, and this is one of them. A combination between Hexblade and Swashbuckler. Now, I know, not exactly the most creative thing out there, this is a pretty obvious combination, but I wanted to kind of put my own little twist on it. The fact that I wanted to have it be more of a rogue than a Hexblade more than anything else, because a lot of the builds that I saw were like 5 Hexblade for the extra attack, maybe 6 or 7 Swashbuckler to get like the basic stuff and some more sneak attack, but that's not really what I wanted to do. I wanted a charisma-based, high-level rogue, still getting that 10th level feat at least, and getting really high sneak attack damage, while also kind of having the ability to be either a Dark Urge Redemption build or just a regular Tav. Because I had the idea for this being a Dark Urge Redemption build because I really liked the idea of the assassin abilities that the Dark Urge would have being translated into a more flashy, kind of like roguish type of fighting style a la Swashbuckler. Like, you still have those deadly swift strikes that you're known for, but you're now doing it with this, like, rogue, almost bardic-like panache that just feels so fun to kind of roleplay out. You get to be that kind of sassy face of the party while still being the stealthy rogue archetype. And honestly, it was a really fun idea to explore, and the mechanics of it actually work really, really well. I was heavily surprised at how much I actually loved the combination here. Again, I love the idea of being a charisma-based rogue for obvious reasons. You get to be an amazing party face, and the fact that Hexblade enables this even more than normal just feels so good. And when for the first time really since in a long time, since this channel's begun, I see one of my builds doing a sneak attack for over 100 damage, like, that feels pretty damn good. I don't build high-level rogues nearly enough. I usually always stop at levels 3 or 4 just for the early game benefits, but I wanted to see how far we can go with rogue that still feels pretty good, and obviously with this build we can go pretty damn far. Those swashbuckler features feel really nice, and it was nice to also get to test out panache for level 10, or 9 I should say, rogue feature for swashbuckler. So obviously, this is a pretty fun one. Again, you're going to be an extremely effective party face. You're going to be dealing out massive damaging attacks, and with the way the whole build is eventually going to be set up, you're going to have the ability to even do extra attacks in a turn and such like that, without having to go for that level of Hexblade. You'll see what I mean as we get into the video. So, let's do that. We're going to be kicking things off as a rogue, and this is done for a couple of reasons. Number one, if we start with rogue, we're going to gain access to sneak attack right away, as well as a bunch of skill and weapon proficiencies that I want. The weapon proficiencies aren't 100% necessary, because obviously we are going to be using Hexblade's feature to give us proficiency with pretty much any weapon in the minutes, but again, I wanted those skill proficiencies, and by taking the multi-class dip into Warlock after rogue, any items that we want to use will use our charisma for any related spell save DC effects. So overall, definitely want to kick things off as rogue. So, looking at our ability scores, we've got a pretty standard rogue spread, basically swapping out the intelligence for charisma. Dexterity is at 16. I want to focus more on our armor class than actually our HP, because the whole point of this build is we're not really going to be a frontline combatant. We are going to be doing the typical rogue thing of go in, get a big hit, get out, let our party members deal with the rest. And as such, a 16 is also going to feel pretty good, because it's going to help us with something towards the very end of the build. Constitution is at 14 here. Like I say, I think this is a happy medium for this build. It gives you enough to survive some big single hits if you do end up taking some, but it's not a deal breaker in the fact that unless you take a lot of hits and end up trying to play a frontline fighter in a big group for whatever reason, yeah, that's going to give you some trouble. With the Swashbuckler features, you will be able to do one-on-one duels with enemies pretty goddamn easily. Intelligence is at 10. I didn't really want to put Intelligence or Wisdom at 8 on this build, so we've rounded it out so we're at least neutral in both, but feel free to swap that around. And Charisma is at 16 for obvious reasons. Moving on to our skill proficiencies. Now, because this is technically a custom companion, so it's based off of Tav, I can't choose the Haunted One background here. So we have the Criminal background for Stealth and Deception, but if you do decide to play this as a Dark Urge Redemption build, you will have the, which is what I personally would, you would have the Haunted One background giving you access to Intimidation and Medicine. So I would say the only thing that would really change about your skill proficiencies is that you might drop Insight for stealth, perhaps, but pretty much it's going to be the same spread. We're going to have sleight of hand and stealth proficiencies, as well as insight, like I say, but that can be swapped around depending on your background. Deception is going to have some expertise in it, because I think that makes a lot of sense for a build like this. Intimidation and persuasion are also going to be a thing, with our expertise put into persuasion as well. Overall, this is really, really solid for doing everything that we want to do as a party-face rogue with high charisma. We get the stealth, and we get the social stuff as well, with the insight being another fun bonus if you decide to go down this route, but obviously not 100% necessary. Haunted One will change things up just that little bit, but you can still pick it, you just might have to drop something else. Right, that's level 1. Pretty simple. Oh, no, not quite yet, because I do actually want to talk about my racial choice for this. Sorry, I'm stumbling my words a little bit, and that is Zariel Tiefling. I would say you could play this as either a Zariel Tiefling or a Drow, because Drow would get things like Darkness, which can be useful for obvious reasons, but I've done a bunch of Drow builds this week, so I wanted to shake it up. But Zariel Tiefling actually feels really, really fun for this build, because you are going to get the charisma-based smite attacks, that being Searing Smite and Branding Smite, which will feel very, very fun to use when they come up. They're only once per long rest, but they do feel really good on this build to get like these extra powerful attacks. So yeah, that is another reason. That's kind of why I went Zariel Tiefling, and giving us Thaumaturgy for advantage on intimidation and performance checks is also going to feel really nice. So yeah, there you go. Zariel Tiefling is actually here for a reason, not just the aesthetics. Right, moving on, we are going to go straight into our Warlock Hexblade dip, because I do feel like this makes sense for the build. As for, like, why we are having a Hexblade dip and what is potentially a Dark Urge Redemption build, someone else pointed out in my Shadow Magic Sorcery video that it actually would be kind of interesting that it is literally Bhaal's influence taking a physical form, like his power that he grants to you, literally taking the form of your weapon. I feel like that's a pretty cool idea, so I think we can make that work. But it does mean that in Act 3, if you do play the Redemption kind of route and lose your connection to Bhaal, you might actually drop the Hexblade level, but I think a lot of people would just keep it anyway for the mechanical flavor, but honestly, that's entirely up to you. So, first up with our Warlock, obviously we get to choose our subclass as well as a couple of cantrips. I mean, Eldritch Blast and Booming Blade. I'm sorry, I know this is getting a little bit repetitive at this point, but when I say that I wanted to make this to be the, like, Hexblade rogue that I kind of envisioned in my head, this is what I'm talking about. Booming Blade is extra free damage, and Eldritch Blast is an amazing ranged option for us. It allows us to be effective in so many different ways. You don't have to take these spells. Friends obviously makes a ton of sense on a build like this, and I would absolutely say pick that up if you would rather have that social aspect available to you. It's entirely up to you. In fact, I would say if I was going to drop a spell for this build, it would probably be Eldritch Blast. I do think Booming Blade does work a bit better, but I feel like having the more offensive kit for combat, which is still a huge part of this game, does make sense. But this isn't a hard requirement. You can drop any of these and pick any cantrips you like if you want a slightly different flavor or, you know, different utility. But overall, this is what I would go with. Moving on to the subclass, we're going to be going with the Hexblade. At some point, I do plan to do a Swashbuckler Great Old One build to remaster my old modded build, which was the Kraken that did a similar thing. Let me know if you guys want to see that. I think some people already have pointed that out. But, of course, at level 1 of Hexblade, we'll go over this rather quickly. We get Shield and Wrathful Smite added to our spell lists. We will be taking Shield, even though it is a bit strange to have on a Warlock. Since we're not going for high levels of Warlock, just having 2 shields per short rest is going to feel very nice, and it also kind of feels like a roguish type of dodge, so we're going to keep that here. We're going to get Bind Hex Weapon, allowing us to use our charisma for our weapon attacks, making us proficient with that weapon, as well as giving the chance to apply Hexblade's Curse, which will allow us to deal extra damage equal to our proficiency bonus and reduce the critical hit threshold. We're going to be playing off of this quite a bit in this build. We're also going to be grabbing Hexblade's Curse as a bonus action as well, so we can apply this a bit more reliably. And finally, Hex Warrior, giving us access to medium armor, shields, and martial weapons, as well as the Bind Hex Weapon feature that we just discussed. So, with medium armor, shields, and martial weapons, we're going to have a lot more options available to us in what armor we can pick, including an old favorite of mine, as you can see here. As for our spells, I quite like grabbing Shield and Hex here, although I could also see Charm Person being grabbed as well. Shield obviously is a great defensive spell for us, giving us a big boost to our AC to allow us to potentially dodge attacks. And Hex, since we're not really going to be concentrating on anything else, could give us a pretty damn decent buff to our overall damage, just applying an additional 1d6 necrotic damage across the many attacks that we'll be doing. So yes, this is pretty standard Hexblade Warlock affair, but I mean, come on, it's Hexblade Warlock, there's a reason it's in infamous for its 1-level dip. We're actually going to go to a 2nd level dip here, which is going to give us that extra Warlock spell slot, allowing us to do, again, 2 shields per short rest. We're going to be able to pick up another spell, which at this point we're not really going to be using. We can grab Charm Person, though, just for those kind of scenarios where it might be useful. We can also grab 2 Eldritch Invocations here, and it's entirely up to you what you want to pick. Agonizing Blast is an obvious pick to give our Eldritch Blast a bit more oomph, and then the other one is kind of up to you. Devil's Sight can come up if you want to play with some Darkness Devil's Sight shenanigans, especially if you do play the Drow version of this build that I just discussed at the start. But otherwise, it's not really a huge deal. If you wanted to organize your skill proficiencies a bit differently, you could actually pick up Persuasion and Deception proficiency here, but I did want expertise in those skills, which is why I took them at the start. So overall, it's entirely up to you, really, what you want to grab. Repelling Blast would actually be kind of good if you do need to disengage, but you don't want to use the disengage. It's weird to say, but it can work. But I actually quite like Beast Speech here from a roleplay perspective, because now you get Speak with Animals really early on, meaning that you now have access to all of the potential roleplay options in the game, while still being an early level and being the face of the party with high charisma. So I think it makes sense to pick this up here. Oh yes, we also got Searing Smite at that level, forgot to mention. Right, so normally at this point people would be like, yep, Pact of the Blade, Pact Boon, working towards extra attack, but nope, we're going back to Rogue. Going back to Rogue is going to give us access to Hide, Dash, and Disengage as a bonus action. We're going to be using Dash quite a lot to be able to maneuver around the battlefield, and enable some Chicanery, which you probably already know about. At Rogue level 3, we get to choose our subclass. We're also total level 5, so we're going to get Branding Smite here as well. But for our subclass, obviously, we're going to go with Swashbuckler. Swashbuckler is going to give us fancy footwork, allowing us to, if we make a melee attack against a target, that target cannot make opportunity attacks against you for the rest of the turn, meaning that we can disengage really easily. We're also going to get Rakish Audacity, giving us a +2 bonus to our initiative rolls. This scales with our rogue level, and we no longer need advantage to trigger a sneak attack, as long as we are within 1.5 meters of the target and don't have disadvantage. This is where our big damage numbers come from, as well as another reason I wanted to have slightly higher dex on this build is because we do want to be able to go first with these boosts or initiatives, so that's why I prioritize dex over con, but you might be able to find a happy medium there instead. Right, moving on. At Rogue level 4, we get stuff that Rogue normally doesn't get at level 4, and that's subclass features. So, first up, we gain Dirty Trick, Flick of the Wrist. We're allowed to use our weapon to flick at our opponent's weapon, possibly disarming them, dealing a bit of damage, and giving us advantage on our next attack. This is a bonus action, and feels pretty good to use. We also have Dirty Trick, Vicious Mockery, allowing us to taunt our enemy with the Vicious Mockery cantrip as a bonus action, and apply advantage on our next attack. And finally, Dirty Trick, Sand Toss, allowing us to pocket sand and throw some sand at an enemy to potentially blind them, giving us advantage on our next attack. Overall, pretty damn solid options. This build is going to be slightly bonus action heavy, but we will be able to kind of use all of these when we need to, as well as the other things that I want to do as well. We also do get our first feat of the build at this level, and at this point it's entirely up to you what you want to pick, but I do think an ability score improvement to our charisma is going to be the best bet. Moving on to level 5 of Rogue, we're going to gain access to Uncanny Dodge, allowing us to, I believe this is once per short rest, whenever an attack hits you, you take half the usual damage. This is a pretty damn good feature. Obviously it gives us a bit more defense for those off chances where we do get hit, but obviously we want to keep that from happening as much as possible. At Rogue level 6, we're going to be able to gain some more skill expertise, and at this point I do feel like Intimidation is the way to go, and Stealth for stealth shenanigans. Look at that +10 to Intimidation. And we've got Thaumaturgy. That's going to make that pretty damn useful. At Rogue level 7, we're going to gain access to Evasion, allowing us to, whenever we would take damage from a spell that requires a dexterity saving throw, we take no damage if we succeed, and only half damage if we fail. Again, it's more tankiness, and feels very, very fun. At Rogue level 8, we're going to be able to get a feat as well, so let's have a look. You obviously could bump your charisma up to a 20 here, but I actually think we want to scroll all the way down here and grab the Spell Sniper feat, allowing us to, whenever we use a cantrip, the number we need to roll to get a critical hit is reduced by 1. This effect can stack. This stacks with our Hexblade's Curse, meaning that now our Eldritch Blast will actually be able to crit on an 18 or lower against or higher, I should say, sorry, on a Hexblade target, which I think is pretty damn good, and we're not actually going to stop there. We also do get to choose another cantrip at this point, and I actually really like Thorn Whip here. The idea being that if we need to, we can like pull someone in with like a whip-like attack. I don't know, that feels very roguish, very Indiana Jones. I really like it. Now, I should make an Indiana Jones build one day. That would actually be really cool. Let me know if you want to see that. At Rogue level 9, we're going to gain access to Panache. We get to roll a persuasion check to beguile a humanoid as an action. They must contest that with an insight check. Enemies who fail gain Panache disadvantage, meaning that they have disadvantage on attack rolls against all enemies except us, and they are also unable to make opportunity attacks against any enemies other than us. So basically they are locked into attacking us, but of course we're going to be pretty good at dodging, and others who fail will become charmed. So out of combat, it allows you to do a charm effect. In combat, it allows you to impose disadvantage on attacks against anyone but you. There's definitely an Oath of the Crown build here as well, maybe. High level stuff though. Anyway, but this doesn't work on certain creatures, this is mainly only on humanoids, but hey, it's not the most powerful feature in the world, but it is kind of fun. And because we are a level 10 rogue, we now have very high sneak attack damage, but also do gain another bonus feat, in which I'm going to say, let's max out that charisma. Alright, that's the build, and now we have a pretty solid kit. We have the ability to give ourselves advantage quite a lot of the time, thanks to these skills, that being all the dirty tricks, and because they grant advantage, that actually does count for Eldritch Blast. And because Eldritch Blast can now crit on an 18 or higher, that with advantage, that means you're going to be critting a lot of the time, both with your sneak attacks, which deal an extra 5d6 damage, and your Eldritch Blasts, meaning that yes, well, this is a crit fishing build, but it's going to do it very, very well. We also get to use our Bind Hex weapon, which I'll do right now, in order to make it so our main hand weapon attack is dealing some pretty decent damage. At the moment it's only 1d6 plus 7, but again, with our sneak attack, that's going to be a pretty significant difference. So overall, we've got a lot to work with here. And yeah, this is going to be a very powerful combination. Like I say, we've got Hexblade's Curse, we've got the Rakish Sneak Attack, we've got our abilities to use our Cunning Action, and again, we're an amazing party face, being able to use things like Speak with Animals and our High Charisma, as well as Charm Person if necessary, to be able to get a leg up, and Panache as well, actually, to be able to get a leg up, both in and out of combat. So yeah, we're a pretty versatile party face, and with the ability to do a little bit of everything. Like I say, we're good at range and melee, so yeah, you've got a lot to play with here, so feel free to have some fun with this one. It is a very cool combination. I know a lot of people are going to be lamenting the loss of extra attack on this build, but obviously you do have options to work around that if you really do need that second attack in a turn, like for example picking up the Darkfire Shortbow for haste, or again dual wielding, which I'm going to talk about right now. So, as for the equipment for this build, some of this is going to seem pretty obvious, but it'll make sense even more as I kind of talk you through it. So, first up, the Knife of the Undermountain King. Surprise, surprise. This allows you to reduce the number you need to roll a critical hit when attacking by 1, so similar critical hit threshold reduction. So now, on a Hexblade target, we critical hit on a 17 or higher. Obviously, with the fact that we can get advantage so easily, we're going to be critical hitting a lot of the time. It's also going to give us the ability to re-roll 2 or less damage whenever we do that with our damage die, so we're always going to be hitting for pretty solid damage with our multitude of attacks, either from sneak attack or our multiple Eldritch Blasts. Also, the Shadowblade feature allows us to gain advantage on attack rolls against lightly or heavily obscured creatures, so we might not even need to use our dirty trick depending on the environment, which feels great. But of course, I've labeled this as a Dark Urge Redemption build, which means I think that in the late game, you could absolutely grab the Crimson Mischief as a trophy for your victory. The Crimson Mischief obviously comes with a bit of extra damage, especially that 1d4 necrotic damage, which isn't built into the weapon. Those other buffs are conditions from our equipment. But allows us to prey upon the weak. This weapon will deal an additional 1d4 piercing damage against targets with 50% of their HP or fewer. Pretty damn nice. As we start to gain the upper hand, we build momentum in our one-on-one duels. It's a +2 weapon. While in your main hand, it would allow you to deal an additional 7 piercing damage flat when you attack with advantage, but we're going to be using this in our offhand because it gives you 2-weapon fighting if it's in your offhand without actually needing to have the fighting style. So overall, this is basically just a way to get an extra attack in as a bonus action if we want to, as well as some other little benefits here and there, but it's mainly just here for a flavor thing. Again, If you're playing Dark Urge Redemption, it's nice to kind of have this as part of your arsenal. But I do recommend another offhand weapon until this point, that being the Club of Hill Giant Strength, to set your strength to 19, which will help with jumping around on buildings and such like that. It's basically completely free just to have in your offhand and just be an overall benefit. And I kind of like the idea of it's almost like a cane that the character has just outside of combat anyway, that just bopping someone with. But having that 19 strength can be pretty damn nice. So that is kind of my personal pick. The only thing I will say, obviously, is that your offhand weapon won't benefit from the bind hexed weapon feature, so your chance to hit with it will be slightly lower, but it's honestly not that big of a deal. For our ranged weapon, of course, when you get into the late game, grab the Dead Shot, allowing you to reduce the number needed to make a critical hit happen again. So now, on a Hexblade target, we critical hit on a 16 or higher. This is starting to get done. You also double your proficiency bonus when rolling ranged attacks with this weapon unless you have disadvantage. Well, we pretty much never have disadvantage with this build, and even with our slightly lower dexterity, we're going to be able to hit things with this bow pretty much whenever we need to. And since we can actually apply something like Branding Smite to this, or our sneak attacks, there is an opportunity to do big ranged damage outside of just Eldritch Blast. So if you didn't want to go with Eldritch Blast, you don't actually need to. But of course, as an early game option for your bow, as well as another alternative already, as I've discussed, the Darkfire Shortbow, giving you 2 resistances, one of which we already have, but mainly the Haste spell, which of course basically gives you extra attack, or an extra Eldritch Blast, or what have you. So, you know, I think a lot of people are really gonna like this one as an option for this build, so I thought I would point it out. Right, moving on. First up, we've got Savarok's Horned Helmet. You gain Dark Vision up to a range of 3 meters, which we already had anyway, or 15 meters if you already have it, so it gets a slight buff. The number you need to roll a critical hit is reduced by 1. So yes, now we critical hit a Hexblade target on a 15 or higher. Yeah, this is getting stupid. As well as, you can't be frightened and cannot be affected with other emulsion-altering conditions. So, obviously this is here for even more critical hit stacking, but again, I like it from a Dark Urge Redemption standpoint because it's another trophy that we've taken on our conquest to defeat Bhaal. I really like this kind of build's flavor already. I think for a Dark Urge Redemption build that is dedicated to using the assassin things that we learned from Bhaal and the cultists against them in a new way feels very, very fun. But of course, in the early game, you can pick up the Covert Cowl, which does the same thing, but you have to be obscured. So you can absolutely use this instead if you are able to maintain your position in the shadows, but obviously Savarok's Horned Helmet comes with a few extra benefits and is just a bit more free to use because you don't need to be obscured. But the Covert Cowl will absolutely work. And honestly, kind of does look good with this build, in a way, if you really wanted to kind of, you know, do some recolorings here and there. Entirely up to you. But I do prefer Savarok's overall, and we keep it hidden. Right. For our cloak, especially if you're playing a Dark Urge, but if you're not, this is optional, the Deathstalker Mantle. Once per turn, when you kill an enemy, you shroud yourself in primeval darkness to become invisible for 2 turns. So gaining invisibility after killing a target so we can slip back into the shadows or set up our next big attack is obviously very, very good and feels very in tune for the Dark Urge playstyle, so I wanted to include this here, but it is optional. If you're not playing a Dark Urge, it's not game-breaking, and if you feel like this AC isn't high enough, you can throw on the Cloak of Protection or something like that. It's not a huge deal. Moving on to my armor choice, of course, it is the 1T Scale Mail. I love this armor. I love its design, and I love its effect. You get to add your full dexterity modifier to your armor class, so we're not limited to just having to have 14 dexterity. You also do not impose disadvantage on stealth ability checks, which is great, and we gain a +1 bonus to initiative rolls. This all fits amazingly with our Swashbuckler features, so I really wanted to use it here. But of course, if you do want a straight upgrade to your armor class, you can grab the Armour of Agility later on, with a base AC of 17, and the similar ability to use your full dexterity modifier, as well as not impose disadvantage on stealth checks, and it does also give you a +2 bonus to saving throws. Mathematically, it's better, and I will combine it with the Drake General die, which is what I've used for this build. And I mean, yeah, but this just looks so much better, and I personally like that buff to our initiative roll a little bit more than the saving throws. Of course, it does come with a lower base AC, but you do get this earlier on in the game, at the start of Act 2. So honestly, I just like this more, and of course since I don't get to use this on the Dancer build anymore, it's nice to bring my favourite armour set back with a new glow. And for the record, the Drake General die, if we really are taking this like, yes, we can be stealthy if we need to, but we are also flashy on the battlefield and do one-on-one duels. I just love this colour scheme. It feels so nice. It's got a little bit of that darker colour motif with like the blacks and such, but you do get this like regal gold and royal red. I just love it. This is my new favourite die. It's just one of the best. Right. Moving on to our choice of gloves, the Daredevil gloves. The biggest problem I have with Eldritch Blast in this type of build is that you do actively have to move away to be able to use it. But if you want to be able to use Eldritch Blast at close range for whatever reason, this is going to help you prevent disadvantage. So, your ranged spell attacks are made as melee spell attacks while adjacent to a hostile creature, and you gain a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls. So overall, this just gives us a big buff to Eldritch Blast, and makes our gameplay style a bit more fluid. If you find this isn't an issue for you because you kind of like to attack with a melee weapon, get away, and then Eldritch Blast on the next turn, you can replace this with something else, but otherwise, I do think the Daredevil gloves just really do help make the playstyle flow a little bit nicer. Now, of course, the Linebreaker boots for our boots option here, obtained very, very early on in the game, and are easily one of the most powerful footwear options for melee builds. Once per turn, when you dash, you gain Wrath for 2 turns. As you all know, this is what is supposed to happen, but that's not actually how the boots work. The once per turn limitation is not there, and you actually gain 3 turns of Wrath. We're 2 hotfixes into the final patch of the game, and this still hasn't been fixed. So, you could dash as a bonus action with our Roguish Dash from Cunning Action, and then you just gain a... Oh, whoops. 1 second, I'm messing things up. Oh my goodness, can I press the right button? Wouldn't be a hobo video without scuff. Anyways, Wrath will give you a +1 bonus to damage with melee weapons for every turn of the condition remaining. So, dash as bonus action, gain a +3 to your melee damage. Do it twice, and this can stack up to +7. Yeah, you already know how stupid this combo is. Combining this with all the extra damage that we get from our other features, imagine critical hitting with this extra damage. Yeah, this is pretty stupid. It's a shame it doesn't work with our Eldritch Blast, but honestly, it's already a bit too stupidly strong. Anyways, now, for your accessories, we actually have the Spine Shudder Amulet here. Whenever you deal damage with a ranged spell attack, you can inflict reverberation upon the target. This is just meant to be some thematic synergy between our ranged spell attacks as well as our Booming Blade, but you can swap this out for kind of anything. Reverberation is just going to give a penalty to their physical saving throws, as well as potentially knock them prone, dealing extra thunder damage. I almost like the idea of our character like going for the feat with Eldritch Blast, causing our enemies to be knocked over. Feels like a very Swashbuckler thing to do. So yeah, overall, I really do kind of like this one. I think it fits well with like using Eldritch Blast, but otherwise, it's not necessary to the build. You can swap this out for something else if you so desire. Anything will really work, so it's a free pick, but I kind of like the Spine Shudder Amulet here thematically. Of course, we've got the Ring of Arcane Synergy, so that when we do use our Eldritch Blast, we get to add our spellcasting ability modifier to the damage done with our weapon attacks. So of course, Eldritch Blast, and then our next sneak attack is going to be pretty damn powerful. I mean, how could I not include it on this build? And finally, since this build is all about critical hits, there's going to be that time when we really do just need one and we don't want to risk it. Even though we have a massively high chance to succeed with advantage and a critical hit on upwards of a 15 or higher, the Killer's Sweetheart will allow us to guarantee a critical hit for when we need it, allowing us to bank a reaction once per long rest that we can use to guarantee a crit after killing an enemy once. So kill a minion and save this for the big boss. And honestly, this whole combination feels extremely good. We have many ways of stacking our damage, and then being able to guarantee that crit to finish it off is going to feel absolutely great. As I already said, this whole outfit is covered in the Drake General dye, I apologize, except for the Deathstalker mantle, which I left untouched. But yes, that is the build, and I know, it's not exactly the most creative. Crit Fishing Hexblade Rogue, what a surprise, but honestly, I genuinely think it is an extremely fun playstyle that I wanted to highlight that has potential for flavor. Like, obviously we have the ability to play into the shadows because it is our natural skill set, but I love the idea of the Dark Urge saying, I know I have these assassin skills and this urge to kill, but I'm not just going to do murder for the sake of murder. I'm not just going to stick into the shadows and stab people in the back. I'm going to walk into battle, challenge someone to a duel, and use my skills fairly. and also, you know, have this flair and panache and all that. I just think it's so fun. And again, the ability to combine powerful melee attacks with things like Booming Blade, as well as being able to do powerful ranged attacks with Eldritch Blast, being the face of the party with our extra high charisma, and being able to even use Speak with Animals and Speak with the Dead if you decide to get the amulet from Withers' Tome. You know, you'll have a lot of things that you can do. Obviously, our sneak attacks are extremely strong, especially when we really start to stack the damage, hence that 100 damage sneak attack I was talking about. We can do that at both melee and range. And of course, we get the dirty tricks, we get Pocket Sand and Vicious Mockery, we just get all of the fun stuff. And again, we even get Thorn Whip, which just feels fun. You're going to have a ton of options available to you on this build that I think are just going to really make this a flavorful build to play. I think it's perfect for a Dark Urge Redemption playthrough, in my opinion. I think everything about this build just comes together so nicely, and I like the fact that we have a token from Scalarius Fel, Savarok, and Orin by the time this build is finished. It just makes everything come together in such a nice little bow. But yeah, that is going to do it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry that this was a little bit late. Obviously, I meant to post on Friday, but I was tired and busy, and so I left it until today. My apologies. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the build. This will be going out on the Saturday, so I believe... Like, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do a Patreon build stream this weekend, if people are still around for those. Might be able to do it Sunday, so tomorrow by the time this video goes up. So hopefully that will be out, but we'll see. Anyways, that will do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.